each other, and so if one person has a question, or maybe somebody else can answer it, and there really can be a good and free exchange of information.
One other thing, there is a petition. There are many residents from Delaware Lake here, many from Hungry Hill here, who I would imagine don't want to be living next to compressor stations. Some of them are circulating the petition called "It Just Doesn't Make Sense." Obviously, not everyone who's part of this meeting is going to want to sign it, but in fairness to those who have created the petition and would like to get signatories, we'll circulate this. If you don't want to sign it, that's fine. Just please respect it and pass it around and give everyone a fair shot to sign it if they choose to. We're still waiting for our air quality expert, so I'm going to just say one brief word about how this site was selected, because I did attend the Millennium meeting the other day. I don't know how many of you got a chance to talk to the people from Millennium. And then Claire's going to make an announcement about a forthcoming town meeting that's relevant. And then I think we'll just open it up for people who want to talk. But again, we're going to have to do it one at a time, given the long, narrow room we're in. Otherwise, it won't work. Millennium explained how they picked this 10-acre site. It wasn't exactly what you would call careful site selection, I don't think, because what they did is when they were expanding the pipeline, they wrecked the house. They destroyed the foundation, they destroyed the sewage system, they destroyed the well. The people who were living in the house sought relief. They drilled another water well, and that was contaminated with sewage. At that point, Millennium threw up their hands, bought out the property owners. That's how they got the site. Now, my personal opinion, that's not the careful selection of a site for a compressor station you want to see. Just because you wreck something doesn't mean it's a good place to put a compressor station. With that, Claire, do you want to announce the meeting that's coming up, the town meeting?
Sure, yeah. We're on the agenda for the board meeting, the town board meeting in Hancock on July 3rd at 5 p.m. I was told that we would be on toward the beginning of that meeting. It probably runs to like 7. But if you'd like to attend, we would be really pleased to have, whatever side of the issue you're on.
What time is that?
At 5 p.m., July 3rd, Town Hall, Hancock board meeting.
Didn't Sam Brown make a statement that he hasn't heard any complaints about it from the local tax-paying residents? I believe I read that in the paper.
Yes, he did.
I like Sam Brown. Okay, cool. I like
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Sam, that
I think he used to hear the complaints.
yes, exactly. I think it's important for us to register on the FERC website. Certainly a lot of us have done at Delaware Lake and all that. But whatever side of the issue you're on, it's important for you to be heard and for you to speak about what is going to happen in our community, on our land. And again, I stress this: whatever side of the issue you're on, we all have to be involved and speak up, because a lot of times these people like Sam went ahead and said that. It's revolting that maybe he didn't hear enough from all of us. Are we not interested? We need to definitely show whatever it is that we want to say. We need to speak up. So I would just.
So the intent of going to the board meeting is letting these people know, shake, rattle, and roll. We're not just. This is not welcome.
3 people objected to it.
Correct.
Yeah, that's all.
So Maya probably knows more about compressor stations than most of us here. So she says, just offered, she could frame the issue a little for us with her more expert knowledge, and then let's open it up to everyone else, if that's okay.
Just so I understand, and Matt, you're not hiding in here.
Matt's not here.
No, it's not here.
All right, just making sure. So if he walks in, we'll let him do it. But Matt is with the Clean Air Council in Pennsylvania, and they've been dealing with a lot of compressor stations, and their focus really is the compressor stations and the air quality impacts, which to a large degree, beyond looking at the source of what the compressor is going to be moving through and what's happening at the particular site when they construct the compressor, I mean the ramifications largely are air ramifications and noise ramifications, and that's why it's really important that we hear from him. And I will just tell you, I know he left at 10:30 this morning. I don't know why he's not here. If he doesn't get here, we'll make sure that we find a way to schedule another opportunity for you to hear from him or to receive what the Clean Air Council has to say, because in terms of comments and concerns and what folks want to be focusing on in this conversation, a lot of that is going to be what Matt would have to tell us all, frankly. And I may be the water expert, but I'm not the air expert. One of the things that would really help me, just to get a show of hands, do people here, show of hands, show your hand if you feel like you have a lot of knowledge, knowledge about what exactly is being proposed here. Yeah, those of you who feel like you know what's being proposed and you have a defined position on it. How's that? Okay. Yeah. All right, so we have a lot of people that know what's up. Who are the people who just heard that there might be a compressor in Hancock, New York, and just decided to show up? All right, so mainly we have people who have a basic sense of knowledge, but I mean, truthfully, it really is. The basics are that they're talking about a 15,000 horsepower compressor that would be attached to the existing Millennium pipeline in order to move more gas, presumably from the shale regions, based upon the documents that Millennium put forth, to move more gas through the area and to the final destinations in New York and beyond. I have a very short, what I call the very basics of the compressor document here. There are only 25 copies, so if you don't need it, don't take it. If you do want it, great, and otherwise we can email it because of that sign-on sheet. But the very basics are on the front, but on the back is really the important part, which is, as you mentioned, going to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission website and signing up to get access to the information that's on the website about the compressor. So this tells you where to go, where that website is, and what is the docket number at FERC. The docket number at FERC is PF12-10. That's what the number you're going to need if you want to try to find this compressor on their website and be informed when something's happening about it.
Can you just say where the exact location of this?
Yeah, the address is 1579 Hungry Hill Road, Hancock.
Okay.
That is the 10+ acre site where the compressor station is proposed. And what they would be constructing there are essentially 2 buildings, one of which would hold the compressor, the other which would hold the accoutrements. There would be a driveway that goes up to the compressor in order to accomplish the development that they would have to accomplish on this 10-acre site to build these 2 buildings and put the compressor in. We've got just over 4 acres of trees that would have to be cleared. There's 0.4 acres of wetlands that would have to be crossed, and so that would be impacted. 2 waterways would be crossed. There are 3.1 acres of very erodible, what they call highly erodible soils on the site, so to the extent that they're disturbing them, there are real concerns about sedimentation for the wetlands and for the waterways, which creates its own set of problems. And then there are 3.1 acres of what they characterize as shallow bedrock, and in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish in that shallow bedrock, they say that they may, it's not a would, may have to do some blasting. Now there are a number of other sites that they looked at. They have alternatives A through G. Some of the alternative sites, there are more impacts than if they did it at this 10-acre site, but frankly, a lot of them are less. And there is one site where there's a willing buyer or a willing, they wouldn't be selling, I don't think. I think they would be giving them access to the property. And where the numbers are, a lot of the numbers compared to, the 4 acres of clearing and zero because it's pasture land. So there is an alternatives analysis document that sort of compares the alternatives, and one can look at that, and it is important to know that there are better alternative locations, but I think more importantly for many of the people here, really the best alternative is don't do it, because you have not, Millennium Pipeline, justified the need for this compressor. You have not really assessed what are the environmental ramifications for this compressor. And whether or not you need it to accomplish the energy goals of the region. You haven't looked at the cumulative impacts. For example, with the Minisink compressor that's also associated with this pipeline, the Environmental Protection Agency asked a question about whether or not that compressor might be associated with a future pipeline upgrade A pipeline upgrade could mean removing smaller pipe and putting in its place bigger pipe, but it could also mean creating what they call loops, where they lay parallel pipeline, or in the case of Pike County, essentially a whole new loop that's going through a lot of virgin forests, a lot of private lands, a lot of exceptional value waterways across the Delaware River. They had to get a lot of public lands diverted for their use in order to create this upgrade to the 300 line. So there were questions about what does this compressor really mean? Does this compressor really mean that you're moving more gas through the same pipeline? Or does this compressor mean there's greater activity that you're planning and you're not telling us about?
I just wonder if anyone knows where a comparable station like the one that's proposing there is located now.
The only one that I'm aware of is in Corning, New York. And that station, according to Millennium, is not suitable for the development of the Marcellus that's going on in Pennsylvania, and they presume will be going on here. See, there is a question of basic honesty here that I think we have a right to ask Millennium. They came through, 4 or 5 years ago to expand the Millennium Pipeline, put in a larger pipe. They never said a word about the Marcellus Shale development to anyone at that time. This was just, give us tax breaks, we're going to expand the pipeline. What for? Well, it's, blah, blah, blah. Now they, last summer they said, we're going to put in a compressor station in Minisink, New York, in a residential community. Last month we learned they were going to put in a compressor station on Hungry Hill Road. There's a notion under the law called unlawful segmentation. If you're doing a project like a pipeline expansion, you are required by law to put all your cards on the table, say this is the extent of the project, this is the environmental impact, so it can be considered in full at one time. Millennium has failed to do that. They expanded the pipeline, said nothing about the compressor stations. They said, no, compressor station in Minisink without talking about one here. They have yet, and as Maya pointed out, we don't know what their other plans are for putting more loops of pipeline in, seizing land by eminent domain. All of this is unclear to us, and it's a legitimate question we have to ask. What is the full extent, what really do they intend to do? What does Millennium intend to do with us? This is just one part of the puzzle, but where does it fit in? We don't know because they have not told us that. And that's a question we need them to come to the table and tell us what they're, put all their cards on the table.
Well, I would just be interested in seeing what it is.
Well, you can go to Corning, there's a plan, and I would call them, let them say you'd like to go examine their plan.
They have a plant, a compressor station in Windsor, New York.
In Windsor.
And it would seem like it would be a good thing if some of us went to take pictures.
Midstream in Montrose.
Is that 15,000 horsepower?
It's comparable. Matt Walker will tell you exactly what it is. But midstream is comparable. HP Midstream. It's a Caddo Williams in Susquehanna County.
Here's a man who's visited the Windsor compressor station.
I went up, and it is not owned by Millennium. It was put in by Laser and bought out by Williams, and they're the second largest gas pipeline operator in the country. I met with Randy Williams, who's the town manager, and spent an afternoon with him, and my basic concern there was to learn about the process, see the plant, learn what had gone good and bad there, and he was very informative and very forthcoming about what he did and what he didn't like. First off, in discussion with him, and I'll try to just cover the high points, the people who put in the station there wanted a separation of at least 1,200 feet. And I might say that this station up here seems to be contrary to everything that any compressor station has tried to do, except when you look at the south in urban areas where they had tried to find separation. The building actually went extremely well. The issues they had there were drainage and water, which are still ongoing. Roads, there are still $250,000 worth of road damage to be improved, and this has been going on now for well over a year, and still they are fighting the company about this. They have 4 compressors up there totaling 12,000 horsepower, and I was at the site, and no house is closer than 1,200 feet away. There have been no complaints as far as air quality. There have been some complaints as far as noise goes. I can tell you from personal experience with only 2 compressors running at the time, in the opinion of Randy Williams, that I would not want to live within 1,000 feet of this building. This building was cut into the side of the mountain, and the back was just a dead shale drop where it had been cut in. The front is probably a berm 18 to 20 foot high in dirt, and yet it was a steady drone. And I stopped my car going in and out at various distances, and there's no way that you would grill out on your deck and not know some machine was running in the area, okay? Otherwise, they have been good neighbors. They have employed 3 people for minor maintenance and site, maintenance. They've gotten no work out of it. His big gripe was that they went to Industrial Development Authority and got huge tax write-offs, for which the local communities have gotten nothing. $108,000 a year is being paid to the county, the state, Industrial Development Authority, and none of this money has come back to the local communities. They've got nothing out of it. The appraisal for the facility is $31 million. They had initial gas quality problems. They had fracking fluid in the gas, required them to bring in tanker trucks. They had a real problem for a while. They had they had quite a few blowdowns for 4 or 5 months. The noise was quite loud. Now that they are running, there have been very few complaints. I have the names of people living on the perimeter and intend to visit them. What else? That's the high points.
You raised 2 issues that I think everyone, whatever side of the issue you're on, you should be aware of, is the tax implications, the implications to the taxpayers here, because you talked about the $40 million worth of road damage. The town of Coshecton, not far from here in Sullivan County, suffered, according to their highway supervisor, $1 million worth of road damage when they upgraded the pipeline. They were never compensated for that. It was $1.3 million damage. They got $100 and something thousand. So they got dimes on the dollars for the road damage they suffered. And yes, I asked at the Millennium meeting the other day, they have already approached the IDA in Delaware County to seek tax abatements here.
Very important thing to add. I talked with a member of the partners. They have already been in town, as you know, it's in the newspaper. They're trying to throw money at the fire department. The library, they talked to the library. The librarian told my wife the money we're going to get. This is the playbook. There is a playbook. Randy made me aware of it. He said we would try to get a copy of it. He somehow got a copy. The playbook is to go in and throw money around, to soften the ground, if you will. The other thing is that he maintains that a town must have a noise ordinance and a road agreement in excess.
We don't have a noise ordinance.
Okay, in excess. The company Lazar,
Yes, we do.
We do?
Lazar agreed to an ambient noise level of 35 decibel, which during the day they could they would have be granted 40 decibels, and in the evening at night 38 at the perimeter of the property.
I just want to make a point that there was somebody up on Delaware Lake 2 days ago for the pipeline company taking ambient noise measurements. Of course, there was a guy down the road doing construction work on with a big backhoe at the time, according to my brother who was here, but just for the record.
I'll be going to Elmira and Quackenbush to find out what's going on.
I'd like to add a point. It's connected to John's statement about the 1,200 feet of distance, in the location that he visited. At our location, FYI, at the north side, the nearest home is 442 feet, and on the east side is 715 feet. So 442 feet compared to the 1,200 that John just said he would not want to be. He was there. He would not want to be that close. And
Is that to the property line or is that to the structures?
that is, nearest to the noise sensitive area.
Right.
So whatever that means, but it's 400.
Oh, Matt.
You would,
I just, is it Jill?
Maya.
Maya. To your point where, and to your point where they're coming up with little plans and adding to it, and they are in negotiation for a hunting property they're offered $1 million, which is 100 acres or so. They offered these people, which is right next to the 10 acres.
Right, they're looking for
Stay. They're building something, to your point, they're looking to build something bigger and not tell us.
they don't need 110 acres for one.
For a
Thank you. So why are they so eagerly, aggressively going after this hunting?
Kathy, correction, they've offered to buy the hunting, they've offered to buy Harrigan's property, 167 acres, and they've offered to buy other smaller properties in the area. Right, so they've offered to buy approximately 300 acres in above and beyond what they already have. I would have to think that any smart person would have to question what their further plans are.
There's a legal requirement for them to disclose this. They cannot be laying groundwork for an expanded environmental footprint and keep it secret. This is illegal, and they must be recorded.
Just to speak to the point of the IDA, not getting tax abatements by the IDA is not going to stop the project. I mean, it did not stop the pipeline. There was a town along the pipeline, the Millennium, that did not give a tax break. Although they did come to every single town and said, if you don't sign off on this project will not happen. It just simply is not true. There is some strong arm that goes on there, and everybody should really be aware of it. Not getting the tax breaks does not stop anything.
Bruce, I've got a couple of points that they need clarification. Within this 1,200-foot perimeter, how many homes are within that are directly affected by the proposed compressor station?
How many homes? The number of homes is not on here. I would have to sort of do a visual. I mean, the glaring thing is that the nearest home is 440
We
feet away.
need to know how many people are directly affected.
Within 1,200 feet?
Within 12, since that, apparently
Is it 1,200 feet the sweet spot, so to speak, of distance?
Certainly, yeah.
Because all I know is they told me in some homes it would sound like, the way they put it, I think they said it was a dishwasher going constantly. And I said, so what compensation is there for the people who now, your property, what's it worth? What happens to your property value? I said, so what compensation are you going to give to these homeowners whose property value is depressed and who have to live with a dishwasher going constantly? And they said nothing.
Right, so we need to know, get back to the point, exactly how many homes are directly affected within that area. You can't, go off and do anything unless you have that kind of data. My second question is, I know there are a lot of people here from Delaware Lake, and I don't know exactly where this property is. How far is Delaware Lake from the actual?
I will show you right now. It's very close.
Claire, there are also homes on 97 that will be impacted and should be counted.
And is this 1,200 feet?
Now,
Where does that?
we're 0.625 miles from
So you're asking me
Can I just say one thing and then we can quiet again? And that is the drone of the dishwasher will absolutely obliviate the frogs and the sounds that many of us have come to this area to hear, the natural resources.
You didn't buy your vacation home in Elizabeth, New Jersey, right? Okay. Sir, how many horsepower was the Windsor plant? Do you know?
There are 3 at 1,800 and 1 at 4,800. It totaled about 11 or 12,000, and they're brought online in a series as they're needed.
Right, so and this is 15,000, so this is somewhat bigger than what the site you examined.
Yes, but all I can say to you is that there are caterpillars up there, and they were told there were turbines. They're caterpillars, so they are a different unit.
Yeah.
But that's all I did find out.
And that 1,200 feet was an arbitrary number that was suggested by the town.
Randy said that when the company came in, they wanted a site that would give them at least 1,200 feet of separation.
That's what Millennium,
That was not Millennium. It was Lazar.
Lazar asked for that.
Right.
As the crow flies, I just heard, just so everybody has this information, supposedly this is about a mile from Delaware Lake as the crow flies.
No,
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 no, no,
I
no.
just was told.
No, that's incorrect.
No.
It's much closer.
If driving is .62, then as the crow flies,
It's going to be closer. No.
Unless you have your data consistent, and I've already got.
But no, it's
We
not
have no data.
our job to provide you with data to satisfy your needs. You can go up there and do exactly what Claire and everyone else is concerned about this and find out for yourself.
Bruce,
We don't have, no, I'm just saying, in fairness,
You go to the town board.
I
the
understand.
town-
I understand.
You don't have this.
But it's not, it's all I'm saying, it's not
There's
our
a key
obligation
here,
to
so I'm
deliver
gonna
to
figure that out. I'm gonna
you.
tell all of us, there
Your
is a key that I just saw, sorry, I
I'll
didn't
push
realize.
this up, I'll sort of play on the screen.
So we have our air emissions expert here now. Maya, you can introduce.
I'll let Matt, I already introduced him earlier, so I'll let you introduce yourself next.
Sorry I'm about 40 minutes late. So yeah, my name is Matt Walker. I work with the Clean Air Council. We're a nonprofit environmental group based out of Philadelphia. So that's where I'm coming from this morning. And today, basically, if you'll bear with me, I just want to go through some general air quality impacts of Marcellus Shale gas operations, and then kind of focus in on the Hancock Compressor Station. I have some maps and stuff off the FERC website that we can kind of go through and talk about ways people can comment on this application.
I don't want to.
Okay. Like everyone, we're quiet down just a little bit because my voice is going to be pretty raspy by the end of this. So just real quick, Clean Air Council, we on our Marcellus Shale, we have tons of programs that focus on air quality, but our Marcellus Shale program, we do litigation, we do community outreach and education, and try to get the public involved as much as possible. With the goal to protect people's health. We try to protect everyone's right to breathe clean air. So I already told you what we're going to do. Is that why do we need to be concerned about air quality? You may have heard this back before, but Wyoming last year had worse ozone, ground level ozone than Los Angeles. For, I think all last year, and it was attributed to natural gas drilling. There's been a couple studies that show in certain states like Colorado, where this has been going on for a while, that natural gas, the industry actually causes more air pollution, again, ground level ozone, than all the cars and trucks combined. Here's another study from Dallas, Fort Worth area of Texas. So what are the actual pollutants? So I'm kind of going to sit through this because I heard a lot of questions and stuff being asked before, so I figured you guys had a lot of questions. Some of the pollutants we should be concerned about. Methane. For a couple different reasons. It is flammable, and it is 21 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So if we're looking at the issue of climate change, we should be pretty worried because the natural gas industry is responsible for a large chunk of our emissions of greenhouse gases in the United
Now,
States.
are these from wells or from compressor stations?
Now I'm talking about, right now I'm just talking about pollution in general from the entire industry. I'll focus in the next couple slides on what they're actually coming from. Just bear with me. It's kind of complex to explain. We need to start with what the pollutants are. So when I tell you what the sources are, you'll understand what they are. Okay? Bear with me, please. It is explosive. One thing we're very concerned about with methane is that it does react in the air to form ground level ozone. I'll tell you why it's important in a few minutes. So the two things to consider. Greenhouse gas is very potent and it does create ground level ozone. Nitrogen dioxide, or NOx, we call it for short. It's basically formed anytime something's burned, and it also is a precursor or helps to form ground level ozone. HAPs, these are very important for public health because they contain things like volatile organic compounds or VOCs, all of which are either known or suspected carcinogens, and many documents showing the health effects of these. Another group of hazardous air pollutants are known as aldehydes, which include glutaraldehyde and formaldehyde, which also formaldehyde causes cancer and respiratory disease. So ozone. Ozone is formed by those precursors I talked about already, NOx or nitrous oxides and volatile organic compounds, VOCs. It basically bakes in the air to form ground level ozone.
Sorry, I'm doing that.
That's good. That's good.
Banner white.
Okay, so I want to look at, now we talked about the pollutants. Now again, just a real recap, quick recap. NOx, VOCs, they form to produce ground level ozone. Methane also produces ground level ozone. Okay, so what are the potential health impacts from these pollutants? Okay, so looking at NOx, there's different low level and high level type of symptoms, anything from eye, nose, throat irritation, burning in the lungs, fluid buildup in the lungs. At high levels it can produce spasms, swelling of the throat, and upper respiratory tract. I'm just going to highlight a few things here. The biggest NOx contributors, now we're starting to get, I just want to show a couple slides here to show where some of the sources are. Currently are from trucks, diesel exhaust, and drilling, again, diesel exhaust. In the year 2020, with the projected development of all this equipment, we think that compressor stations would be one of the top producers of NOx, and the other sources would continue to be about the same level. So some potential health impacts of HAPs, as we talked about before, and not only do you have different types of cancers, but you have damage to the liver, kidneys, and central nervous system. And you also have things like eye, nose, throat. The largest sources of VOCs right now are from well completions, when they're flaring off the well and completing the fracking process, as well as condensate tanks. But in the year 2020, it's projected that, again, compressor stations and well completions will comprise the majority of VOC pollutants. So we're seeing a pattern here, right? Compressor stations are projected to be producing the largest quantities of NOx and VOCs in the future, starting now with the way things are rapidly developing. So VOCs, NOx, produce the reaction there to form ozone. The health impacts of ozone, as you may know already, are respiratory issues. You have throat irritation, you have aggravation of asthma, aggravation of emphysema, bronchitis. You have ozone has been linked to bladder, kidney, and different types of cancer. So it's, it is a serious issue, and the thing with ground level ozone is that it's a regional health issue. It's not just confined to 100 feet or 100 yards away from a compressor station or a source. Ozone has been tracked to up to 200 miles downwind of its original source. So this is a regional air quality issue we're talking about here. You can have permanent lung damage with repeated exposure. Other things I'm not even going to go into too much detail on, but just to highlight are the issue of silica dust, which is for workers a really big issue, but also for residents living in the area where drilling is going on. As you know, sand, silica is used in the fracking process, and that dust is emitted into the air during that process, and can cause silicosis, lung cancer. Also, we have naturally occurring radioactive materials, radon, and it's projected. There's been reports that show the Marcellus Shale natural gas does have higher levels of these radioactive materials. Okay, now we'll get into the sources of the air pollution. And just to start out, I want to show this picture from the EPA's website. It shows that this is a scenario of what a natural gas network would look like, and it's a complex web of interconnected sources of air pollution. That any one source might not produce a whole lot of air pollution, but when looked at all together, kind of zoomed out like this, then we see things start to add up very quickly. Now I'm just going to go through, and this is another sort of more interesting view. This is from National Public Radio, NPR's website. They have a website called State Impact PA. You can check it out. But it again shows sort of a zoom out of the various processes and kind of go through some of them right now. Starting with, you know, the 1,000 or so truckloads back and forth that are needed to do a frac job to get the water and the sand onto the site. Diesel exhaust, just this past week, the World Health Organization officially said that diesel exhaust is a carcinogen, even though we probably knew that beforehand. Now it's official. So, you know, this is an issue. And truck traffic, you know, it's not permitted. You know, trucks have to get past certain, you know, cars past certain state regulations. But as far as the industry goes, that's a whole another source of pollution that's not being put into the mix. The same thing with drilling rig engines. Drilling rigs do not need any kind of air permits. All they need is a water sediment erosion control permit. So, you know, you have the diesel engine running all the time, you have the truck engines running all the time that's producing quite a bit of diesel exhaust. Again, NOx, VOCs, ground level ozone. Then during the well completion, the flaring process or venting, during whatever the case may be, venting, they're just letting the methane shoot straight out of the well, basically at the end, and it contains VOCs too. That's pretty bad. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, says that flaring, if you light it on fire, actually produces less air pollution because the burning process, it burns up some of the VOCs and nasties up. But you know, you see this 10-foot high fireball in the air, and it's a little bit disconcerting. Again, flares are one of the largest sources of VOCs in air pollution. We have VOCs emitting from open air water impoundment pits. There's a move to try to get all these impoundment pits enclosed right now, but I have no idea what the
No, they don't require.
pipeline leakages.
Matt, excuse me,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've had a glass and a half of wine, so excuse me.
Okay.
Talking about what you have been talking about has nothing to do with our very precious time. We only have an hour more. We're talking about gas compressor stations. I'm a pathologist. Please don't put that in the newspaper. I don't want my house broken into, as the quote rich pathologist. I went head to head with one of the Millennium people, and I went head to head with one of the fervent toxicologists. And I spoke with an engineer from Millennium who explained to me, maybe right, maybe wrong, maybe you can correct us. And by the way, I don't thank you. I do thank you for coming up from Pennsylvania, but we have very little time and we have a gas compressor station. We're not here to discuss fracking. We're not, no, excuse me, I'm on Delaware Lake. This is very passionate today. What they told us, and my husband is much more engineering than I am. I'm sorry to bring him into this, but he can tell you what kind of combine engines they have. I had the information on xylene, toluene, methane. I can tell you all about how they're carcinogens, pro-leukemia, pro-various anemias, etc. They told us, rightly or wrongly, and maybe you can help us with this, that they were not emitted from the type of turbine engine that was going to be on Hungry Hill. The woman at FERC, who is a toxicologist, did agree with me that we all know we have something here in this area. We don't know if it's in our groundwater. We don't know what it is. But we know there are 2 kids recently in French Woods who have leukemia. A whole bunch of very interesting...
And 2 on Delaware Lake.
Right, 2 on Delaware Lake with leukemia. 2 related cancers related to the bone marrow also.
Excuse me. Them kids in French Woods are part of my family. You do not use them as a pawn in your game.
No, I do.
No, you do not.
I'm not using them.
Whoa,
Excuse me, Lynn Bass is one of my good friends. I'm telling you the truth.
Ma'am.
What? No, I'm finishing this.
No, I'm sorry.
The toxicologist will agree.
Stop it.
No.
He was part of the presentation. We called a meeting with an expert on this.
Okay.
Let him finish. He's driven for hours to get here.
I know, but I'm saying we want to hear about
sit down and shut up and let him finish the presentation.
Really?
It's not your time. It's to set the agenda. You did not call the meeting. Sit down, shut up, and let him finish.
I'm going to say one more thing.
Sit down, shut up, and let him finish.
1 carcinogen plus a second carcinogen does not equal 2. Any toxicologist will tell you. And I'm sorry, we've all had leukemia. That's my point. One carcinogen is there, we don't know where it came from. A second carcinogen, together with the first one, from heaven knows where, does not equal 2. It's logarithmic, it equals 50 or 100.
All right, so I
And
want to keep you concerned here, and from my perspective on this, it is very crucial to understand the cumulative air quality impacts, not just of one piece of equipment, because that's not what you're necessarily going to be dealing with in the future. And it's not, you know, the emissions from one station are, you know, important to look at, but I think it's good, and that's why I'm giving you this background in what the pollutants are and what the sources are, because I think it's necessary. So. We're working our way through here, and I'm getting pretty close to the part about compressor stations. So we just have to be patient there.
Listen, the entire justification for this compressor, the Minnesota compressor, every other compressor, every pipeline expansion that's going to be bringing more compressors that Millennium has put forth is dependent upon, based upon their claims about delivering more Marcellus shale gas. So, whatever your opinion on that issue and its relevance, if you want to argue against more compressor stations, this one or any others in your community, not about where you put them, because that really is just not my backyard. The goal here is to stop these from proliferating in the community, because if they don't put it here, they'll put it somewhere else, and it'll still be in your community. If you want to stop them, you have to demonstrate that there's not need. You have to be able to argue for cumulative harm. And that's the case that Matt is making. The cumulative harm is very significant. It's not just about the Hancock compressor. It's the compressor, the pipeline, and the source drilling site. That's really the big picture that he was putting forth with those graphics.
And I'll tell you what, one reason why you should be very, very worried about all of these impacts from whatever source, that you guys are downwind from what's going on in Pennsylvania, directly downwind of this going on in Susquehanna County, Bradford County, you know, the northeast and the north central regions. That's where the air patterns go. You guys, even if you don't have the development here, you're going to get the ozone there. So, you know, knowing about this is an important thing. Okay, so starting to talk about some pipelines. We're going to have a lot of gathering transmission pipelines. You know, it's been estimated, studies have been done to show, industry says anywhere from 2% of all gas that goes through their system leaks. Other studies have found up to 8% of what goes through the system leaks. So that's a big range, but still, 2 to 8% of all the natural gas that's going through a system is leaking is pretty incredible. Again, for looking at climate change issues as well as public health issues. Considering the VOCs and nor naturally occurring radioactive materials that are inherent in that method. So pipelines, fugitive emissions. This is just a chart from a compressor station that shows fugitive emissions. Anytime there's a leak, anytime there's a nut and bolt, something comes together, there can be a leak. Okay, just you might already know what a compressor station looks like. It emits all the pollutants we talked about, basically methane, NOx, particulate matter, carbon dioxide, VOCs, additives, there. This is what one. Now, this is not what the Hancock station is going to look like, but this is what the guts of another compressor station looks like, and how large some of the engines are. You can see, like, there's a front loader here and a little person there. These engines are pretty huge. They're like the size of a small house. There's different equipment, dehydrators, condensate tanks on the premises that are also emitting air pollutants. This is again a dehydration unit. It sits typically on a compressor station, and it's essentially separating out water from the gas. Condensate tanks collect liquid hydrocarbons and store them, but if you look, this with the naked eye at a tank, this is using a special clear camera to see.
Is this what's going to be up on Hunter Hill Road?
No, it's not.
Ultimately, I mean, I understand what they said they're going to do, but I also understand they're trying to buy a large piece of property to do something else. Is this the something else that they're talking about?
Well, I don't know about that. I did not see that they're going to have a condensate tank.
I think the condensate tanks come more like the Susquehanna gathering, the Bluestone gathering, clean up the gas there,
Well, I mean, my interest is why are they trying to buy the 100 acres next to it? Why do they need that? You know, what is it that they're planning to build?
Well, I'll tell you just in general.
I don't think you can answer that.
Just wait.
Like maybe
in general, I don't know what's going on here in this situation, but I mean, looking at, I've looked at like 15 to 20 other compressor stations in Pennsylvania, okay? And what typically happens is a permit, they apply for 1 or 2 engines on a plot of land, but they have a lot of land, or they purchase more land. That's so they can expand in the future. And they do. And so, a year passes, they'll apply for another engine. A year passes, they'll apply for 2 more engines. And before you know it, you can have a site with 11 or 12 engines on it. That's, I'm not saying that's necessarily what's happening here, but that's
probably why they want to buy the 300 acres, in addition to the 10.
I'm just curious.
They did say they would not. I don't know. Until 15,000 horsepower, they did not refuse to admit that this is a full build out.
Yeah.
Right. So our interest here is not what they're doing with this. Is like what's their ultimate plans? And the fact that they're talking about buying more property all around to expand. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to realize that they have other plans beyond this little bit of thing that they're planning to do right now. So the people next door, if they're offering $1 million, and then, well, okay, $1.5 million, and then, okay, $2 million to buy that 100 and something acres next door to build something, which they're not saying what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm not a rocket scientist. But you don't need to be one to realize there's something going on here that we don't know about. And I'd like to know about that. Ultimately, what else is it that they need this extra 100 and something acres to do? That's all.
They have like in a landfill, how they had the stacks, the methane to escape into the air. Will these compression stations have something like that? Will they have a stack where they burn it off?
They're slated to have 52 foot stacks.
I was just curious.
52 foot stacks.
52 feet, and it'll burn off or just go into the air?
Matt, what comes out of the
Okay, guys, can I call time out here and let me go through the presentation? Because I did prepare a presentation for you. I worked a long time on it, so I
drove a long way too.
Thanks, Adam.
And isn't this an educational process?
Yes.
Okay, so I think there's some other things you might be interested in because you're in an area with a lot of mountains. It's called inversion. It's when the hot air sits on top of cold air. It prevents wind from mixing. That means it keeps all the air pollution down the valleys. So, not only are you going to have increased smog, it's going to stay there and it's going to have more of an impact on health than it would if you were in an area that's just flat. Okay, that's another thing to consider in the mix. This is what I was referring to as downwind. You are downwind from a lot of natural gas operations that are going on in Pennsylvania right now. If you look, it's hard to see, but if you look at the blue arrow that I highlighted where we are in the red circle, it's you can see you're downwind with a lot of air emissions already, regardless of what's going on in your backyard. Monitoring is not matched up at all with where Marcellus Shale, operations are going on, and that's a problem we've been pushing DEP, and they're actually starting. I think Pennsylvania, they're starting to put more monitors in rural areas. Right now, they're in urban, populated areas, so we don't have a good record or knowledge of what's going on out in these kinds of places. Okay, so this is what I could pull off of FERC's website, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. You can go on there. You probably already know, some of you, they have an e-library. You can pull up a bunch of documents about the project. There's a website about the Millennium Pipeline Project. You can get all the maps and everything. So there's the pipeline. Here's the Hancock station. Here's the location with their topo map. I'll put this presentation up on our website sometime this weekend or Monday, which is cleanair.org, and you can find it there. Kind of look at some of these, or there's links in that kind of thing throughout. So you can click on links and get access to where this stuff's going. Okay, and it's on the handout here too. This is the sort of the building schematic. I just threw this on there for us, so I don't. I do see that they have a proposed exhaust stack, because the compressor station building and auxiliary building, which I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I thought this might be interesting to show.
Thank you.
Mr. direction of the 100 acres that they're trying to buy related to? Do you know?
I can show you the
Well,
map.
if you walk Hungry Hill Road, where the cut is, where the pipeline is, just to the left of that. Yeah. That's what they're trying to buy. And then, beyond that, there's a lot of property they're trying to buy.
It's actually to the right of this, to the right. To its right.
Okay, so they're proposing to divide this kind of area down here.
No, to the right, to the
To the right of the site, of the 10 acres. that we
Well,
have.
on Hungry Hill Road, they're just trying to buy.
It's adjacent, it doesn't really matter, it's adjacent.
They're proposing, this is going north?
Yes.
Okay, they're proposing.
Yeah, it's actually
Right.
south.
So all of this goes out in like this, and then bordering that, on the other side of the road, there's another 167 acres.
That's only a 10 acre site itself, so this is what you're talking about, because way off.
Way off street.
Right.
Okay, so here's just, I pulled this right off the website. I don't know, how many of you have been onto the Millennium Pipeline website and seen these things? Alright, so, you know, and I think I heard you discussing some of this already. The basic information is 15,000 horsepower turbine-driven engine, which is really different from a lot of the stuff I've been seeing in Pennsylvania, which are typically will have 6 or 7 2,000 brake horsepower engines. But I mean, when you combine the horsepower together, it's going to be. This is still what's called a quote-unquote minor source of air pollution, which I can talk about in a few minutes. But it is equivalent. It's a huge engine. It's massive, and it's the obviously transport the natural gas and pressurize it. Yep, that's the purpose of it. It will be natural gas powered. The building footprint, did you guys talk about that already?
No.
Okay, it's 90 feet by 60 feet. The height is 34 feet, and it does have one stack that reaches 52 feet. They're projecting.
How many stories?
5 stories.
How high is that?
10 feet.
Yeah.
So 5 stories.
3 stories. Yeah, 34
The building
feet.
is 3 stories.
But the stack would be.
And the stack is
Yeah.
5 stories high.
Yeah, and they're projecting that the in-service date, if this goes forward, would be November 2015. They're thinking that it might have 75 to 90 construction jobs, and I put it here short term because they might need a few people for a long-term job to kind of operate. That's what the job is.
The website for this is also on the back of the handout.
And